excited about our guest this week, Maria Melendez, who is an awesome person to interview because she has connections, or her whole family does, connections in both St. Catherine's and St. Sebastian's. The Melendez family, of course, is a St. Catherine's parish family, but also really active in the St. Sebastian School. You're chair of the school committee, but also Maria does amazing work in the community too. She's a director of grants and quality assurance at the Guest House. Did I get that right?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good.
Good. Okay, good. So we'll talk about that because the Guest House has a great mission and service to the city. So I want to talk about that too. So when I asked Maria if I could interview you, she said, I guess so. And I said, yeah, there's so much to talk about. So I'm talking you up here. I hope that's okay, Maria. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, John?
Good. Thanks so much for doing this.
Sure thing.
Let's jump right into it. My first question is, I'm sure people know you, but for those that don't know you, tell us about you and your family.
Well, sure. I'm a native of Denver, so that's a little unique here in Milwaukee. The migration pipeline usually runs in the other direction. So, but I've been here ever since college. And my husband Matt and I and our 3 kids live in the Sherman Park area, so not too far from St. Catherine's. We've got 3 kids. So Eliana, who's in 8th grade, just about to graduate from college. She's been there for the full 10 years. Talia, whose birthday is actually today, I'm turning 12.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, she's in 6th grade. And Ian is the trailer, who is in 2nd grade. So, yeah. And we belong to St. Catherine's. We have ever since, even before Eliana was born, I think. And then it got involved in SEBS once we picked a school, which we felt that SEBS was a totally perfect fit, and it has been for our kids. And, gotten really involved there as well. And both communities have been total blessings to our family, different ways, but equally blessings to us.
Yeah. I that's how I would describe both communities too. Tell me about, so you went to college here in Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you go?
Yeah, I went to Marquette.
You went to Marquette, excellent. And then you just fell in love with the city so much you couldn't imagine leaving?
It was a little bit like that. Actually, when my mom brought me here to drop me off at Marquette, I said, please don't leave me here. It's like, this is a foreign place and it does not seem like home at all. Right. But through my years at Marquette, I got really involved really in the area of service and homelessness through Marquette's campus ministry and various different ways at Marquette, and got to feel really part of this community in a way that I felt like I couldn't really leave. Mm-hmm. So I ended up, my first job out of college was at the Guest House.
Really?
And so I did leave for a little while. I went to grad school in Chicago, and then I worked somewhere else, and then here in Milwaukee, and then went back to the Guest House when Eliana was born, and I've been there ever since.
So if anybody's not familiar, can you just tell us about what the Guest House is?
Well, sure. It's, most known as a homeless shelter, although at this point our shelter is a smaller component of what we do. So shelter for men originally, and now we've expanded into all kinds of different programming for homeless and at-risk folks. So everything from homelessness prevention to rapid rehousing, which is what it sounds like, quickly getting people rehoused, and lots of permanent housing and substance abuse and mental health treatment and all kinds of other stuff. So it's grown to be a pretty big operation.
Where's the Guest House located?
Just north of the Marquette campus. So on 13th between Juneau and McKinley.
Yeah, that's good. When you started there, what was your role? Right after college?
Yeah, so actually while I was finishing college, I worked in the shelter office, which I loved. And then I was hired as a super naive case manager for the emergency shelter. And it still to this day is my favorite job I've ever had. It's just really awesome to be able to walk on that journey with men who were, at their lowest point really. And, walking through that to hopefully a successful end, not always for sure, for sure. But I loved that role. I really did.
So I want to just ask you a little bit more about that. So like when you were starting in the shelter office or being a case manager, can you just talk a little bit about, I mean, not everyone has had that experience of, being someone who's homeless or being someone that's walking the journey with someone who's homeless. Can you talk about, I mean, you talked about it as a privilege, but what was that like?
Yeah, it is a privilege because people are so vulnerable at that point. There a whole lot has gone wrong, and a whole lot of people have rejected them, and society has rejected them, and many times, they've kind of feel like they've lost their dignity, and their place in the world. And so building back from that is a really tough thing, and it's not a linear process at all. It's definitely a step or two forward and a step or two back, and but it's definitely a faith witness too, to watch folks go through that and come out the other side, sometimes easily and many times not easily at all.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure like there's probably great rejoicing and great sorrow involved.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And there are still some folks, sadly, that I worked with back then who are still kind of in the same circles. So some folks, are still kind of in the homeless realm and kind of going from place to place. There are also a few folks who will come and they still remember me from when I was way younger. And nice to know that I had enough of an impact that they remember me. So, that's not what it's about for sure, but there's a lot of a lot of fulfillment that comes from all that.
And now your role is like mostly grant writing, which is, I'm sure, helps them do their work. Do you want to say anything about what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I always say it's probably the most boring job at the guest house, but I guess as you kind of go on in life, you figure out where your best value is. And while I most enjoyed the direct work with folks, there are a lot of people who do that much better than I do. And I feel like, at the end of the day, where I can contribute best is on the funding side and some of the technical side. And I also get to dabble in community level strategy for homelessness, which I love doing. So it's definitely not the personal side anymore, but I feel like it's still a great way to contribute. And ultimately, we're working towards an end to homelessness, which sounds a little lofty, but it's actually not that impossible. It really can be done. And right now, we're seeing a lot more money flow into the shelter system or the homeless system via CARES Act and other dollars, where we might be able to really come a lot closer to that goal than ever before.
That's exciting. I know you know this, but like, there's two ways to deal with situations. One is the direct service, but the other is advocacy and working on the structures. And you just you've had a hand or a foot in both of those. And
right. Yep. And having done both, I think makes me better at what I do now.
Of course it does. Yeah. So thank you. And it takes the specific skills to be able to navigate those grant waters, I'm sure.
Yeah, mostly perseverance through a lot of drudgery. Yeah.
Well, that is a quality I would say about you. The little bit that I know you, that you're not scared of hard work, and you are definitely loyal and committed, and persevere, as you said, through sometimes slow processes, but you have accomplished a lot. So I mean, I'll say that.
Well, thanks, John. I hope to be those things anyway.
Let's talk a little bit about your faith and then your involvement in both Catherine's and Seb's, because that's kind of what I'm referring to as to how I've seen you be effective. Oftentimes behind the scenes, and I don't know how much people know that, but let's start with your faith. How would you articulate your faith?
Yeah, big question. But I've watched several of the videos that you've done, which have been great, and I've loved getting to know folks through through those videos. But what really struck me is how often people start talking about their childhood when you pose this question. And I know, I mean, some people surely come to their faith later in life, and some of those are sometimes the most faithful people there are. But many of us, and myself included, really get our start when we're kids. And that's definitely the case for me. So I was thinking about this question a little bit, and what really I was brought to was thinking about when I was pretty young. Um, my dad was an alcoholic, and it ultimately died from being an alcoholic when I was 7. So
Oh, wow.
our my younger years were pretty tumultuous before he died and after. But so my mom raised my brother and I ultimately, as a single parent for sure, through a pretty rough stage. And I would say that she raised us on faith alone,
Mm.
for sure. And so I think that I grew up feeling like faith was just as much of a basic need as shelter or food or any of that stuff. And so it just was. And then and my mom had been kind of a stay-at-home mom doing like daycare out of our home and things like that, but quickly had to get back into the workforce. And so she was a teacher and kind of like desperately needed a job. And so she applied to lots of places and felt like she needed to get a job in the public schools in order to be able to support us. And she didn't get any of those jobs, but she interviewed at a Catholic school, and she said, "Well, if they give her an offer at $10,000, she would take it." And they offered her $10,000, and so
Wow.
she took that job. And my brother and sister had started in the neighborhood public schools, but I was going into first grade, and so I went with her. And had all of my school in Catholic schools, all the way through college. And I think first, my mom is for sure the source of my faith, 100%. But the school community and our church communities were very much part of raising us, or raising me in particular, because I was more tied in because of going to the Catholic school. And I just witnessed so many people of faith through that, that I think has just become part of me. And there are times where faith is big, and there are times when it's kind of quiet. But I feel like my faith is always there, and kind of always the root
Yeah.
of my choices and what where I want to go in life.
Yeah. Wow, there was just a lot there. I'm sorry for the struggles of your childhood and your mom. You used the word perseverance earlier. I'm sure that was a quality that you learned, probably picked up from your mom too, right? Because it sounded like she had to persevere.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, she was and is an incredible rock, And when she talks about her own self during that time, she thinks she was a mess, like she couldn't handle it, she didn't handle it. And it's like, wow, from my perspective, she was a complete rock, and never wavered. And and I credit that to her faith, like there was not much to hold on to during some of that time.
Does she talk about her faith in a way that makes sense?
She does, but she more lives it.
Yeah.
She lives it, and it about her. And she, there continued, like for everybody, there's continued to be a lot of struggles, and she always goes back to prayer and faith and how she gets through all of this stuff.
Wow, I don't know your mom, but she sounds pretty incredible.
Yeah, totally is.
Okay, so now why don't you talk a little bit about Seb's and Catherine's.
Yeah, so Seb's is kind of, it's easy for me to explain, where that fits for us, because I mean, talk about a home, it's been our our home for our whole family.
Yeah.
And surely for our kids, since they've started school. But for me, yeah. So for me, I ended up going to school with my mom every day early and staying late, and then watching her grade papers, and like how much of a labor of love being a teacher is in general, but being a Catholic school teacher that much more.
Right.
And so I really developed this, really profound respect for teachers and schools and Catholic education. And it doesn't just happen at all. And so when, it's never a question to me whether I wanted to send, or we wanted to send our kids to a Catholic school, for sure, for me. And then we found SEBS being a perfect fit. And then in terms of my own involvement, it surely comes back to knowing what it takes to do that job, and how much support, you know, is needed in a school like that. And so I've just found ways that I hopefully can be helpful.
Lisa and I often joke that like you should be on the payroll because of how much you do, especially for the school committee and the playground project and supporting the teachers, and Heather as the principal. Like you've done a lot of behind the scenes work.
Yeah, and behind the scenes is really where I like to be. I'm not really a front and center sort of person, and I like to see things happen. So I've been really grateful for the opportunity to be involved. There's a lot of places where you might want to be involved, but there's not a place. And SEBS has been super about letting me get involved in things and do things. So
I think it's always very welcome when you come to the plate. So I know this from my experience getting to know St. Catherine's more, but talk about St. Catherine's now, because I know, St. Catherine's is a special community, and a lot of people watching this are going to be from SEBS, and I keep wanting to tell the story of Catherine's to SEBS too.
Yeah, for sure. So St. Catherine's is the closest parish to where we live. So that's kind of how we got there in the first place. But it is just an incredible small community of just salt of the earth people. I mean, just no frills at all, but such good people. Yeah. And we've been blessed with some awesome pastors, and Jack Kern and Father Larry, and now Father Peter Patrick. And, all of our kids were baptized there, and there aren't a whole lot of kids in the parish. And, but there are people who've adopted them like they're their own, and they have a place. Eliana's about to start being a lector, and Talia's an altar server. Well, she was before COVID. Hopefully she can be again soon.
Yeah.
And then Ian's his own little self, but he just made his first communion. And the girls when they did theirs, they feel so connected to both communities that they actually had their first communion twice, if you can do such a thing, right? And so they celebrated their first communion, at St. Catherine's, and then with their classmates at St. Sebastian. Well, we got to Ian, and with COVID, we didn't feel like we could really take space twice, and so we asked him where he wanted to do it, and without a doubt, he wanted to do it at St. Catherine's, even though he was by himself. There were no other children who were doing it, and I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. He would choose to do it by himself. I didn't really want to make him feel funny about that decision or anything, so I didn't really ask him any more about it. Then my sister came for his first communion and asked him, why did you choose to do it here? And he said, well, this is my church home. And that's not a term that we use, and so I was really shocked to hear him say that. And I don't think it's a term he knows. I think it's what he feels, that community really is a home for us, and family for us. And so that was pretty powerful.
Am I remembering, did Bernadette come as a grandparent?
Yes, she's one of several adopted grandparents. So she actually did go to Grandparents' Day, yes, at school with the kids one time, but very much is a local grandma for us, as well as some other ladies are similar.
Oh, that's fantastic. The close knit community of Catherine's is I think the part that I feel is so special about the community.
Yeah,
I love that story.
For sure.
I love that story of Ian. That's great.
Yeah. You really can't go and just sit in the pew and leave there. It's like you have to be part of it.
Yeah, you got it.
In a good way.
Got to say hi to everybody. How did Ian's first communion go? How did that feel for him?
Oh, I think he loved it, and he's a really shy guy. He follows after his mom a little bit that way. And so I thought, man, he's going to be, on the stage by himself. But I think I think it was really powerful for him. So
I have heard from several St. Catherine's community members that said how special it was, and the recent baptism there too.
mhm.
You
It
know,
was all the same day. Yeah.
yes, the same day, right? It was like it's a community that truly celebrates when it's time to celebrate.
Yeah, for sure. And that role of, we're going to support this child in their faith journey. Well, man, does this community do it?
Takes it seriously, right?
They do.
It's the call that we talk about, but then how do we actually live it? St.
Right.
Catherine does that well. Yeah, good. Okay, my last question for you is to, as you think about the future, what do you hope for, Maria?
Yeah, man, so many things really, but one of the things I think about both of these communities, um, but I'll talk right now about SEBS and the school specifically, is that I feel like some of my hope for the future you can see in the present, in the school. So, like I was thinking about this, and I feel like I have not ever one time heard any of my kids in these 10 years say something about a classmate that had to do with, who they were as a person or where they came from, or, anything disparaging. And I would say that I won't take any credit for that. I think it's the community that they've been raised in, where there are so many different kinds of, in this case, kids from so many different backgrounds and with so many different needs, including, kids from St. Coletta and all that is their normal, that's not, it's not odd to have kids from all kinds of different places that, or who look different and, all of that is their normal. And I've asked them a lot of times to, reflect on what has it been like to go to such a diverse school, and they have nothing profound to say at all. And I'm like, well, gee, like this is so incredible. We live in this, super segregated city where opportunities or environments like this are rare. People think that it's an unattainable goal.
Yeah.
And here you've lived it and you have nothing profound to say. And it's like, because that is their normal, and why would it be any different? And so I guess when you say, what's my hope for the future? I hope it's so much more of that. For my own kids, I hope that they continue to live it and spread it. And I hope that environments like that and the close community of St. Catherine's, I hope those kind of things become so normal that we have nothing profound left to say about it. That we all just really accept each other just for who we are, and can live our gifts, the gifts that we've been given, and spread them and celebrate them in others, and all of that. That would truly be my hope.
I love that so much, and I don't know if I've ever thought about it in that way, but my kids would say the same thing. They don't think about it as unique because it's only their experience, but we know from experiencing a wider world that these two communities are unique in so many ways. So yeah, let's keep spreading the spirit of St. Catherine's and St. Sebastian's.
Let's do it. You're doing a great job of that, John.
You are too. We're doing it together. So thank you, Maria. And thank you for doing the interview. Even though you're shy, I know that, but I really appreciate you doing this with me because as I suspected, this was a really nice conversation to have. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, John.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.